Hello, 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 and welcome to Light the Heart. Um, we are running a little bit behind today because time isn't real, so it's fine. I'm Becca.
I'm Jessica.
I'm Abby.
So today we have Jessica with us, who is our in-house certified peer recovery coach. And we just thought we'd ask her to join us for our conversation today. We're super excited to see what comes up today and see where the conversation takes us.
I like the time is not real construct. Let's start with that. It's my favorite. My kids and my husband always look at me and shake their head when I try to talk about this because it's such a fun concept to me. Like, if you think about it, right, we do have different perspectives around the globe of time. And I've been talking, this is interesting too, like this whole week I've been talking with my patients and myself about how as a society, as a people, we've been programmed to go from A to B, right? And we're like, oh, I'll be so happy when I get to B. I'll be so peaceful when I get to B. And the B is always like this time and external thing outside of us.
Oh, not just outside of us, but if we actually do achieve whatever this goal is, suddenly there's some other goal that must be achieved to actually be happy.
Right.
And so I think this extends beyond the time concept, and it's really this idea that it's always something outside of ourselves that we need. Instead of going inward, instead of being in the moment and being like, oh, this is where I am right now. And right now it's snowy out and it's very chilly and the earth is like hibernating. And I could like just enjoy that and have a nice cozy cup of coffee and maybe read a book or something. We're like, there are places I need to go because society told me to. And why are these roads the way they are?
Or I'll be happy when it's summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as it's nicer out, then I'll be happy.
Or then I'll work out, or then I'll go do this self-care thing or get out in nature.
But then when it is nicer out, then, it's too hot.
Right.
You run into this, Jessica, yourself.
I do. And I think I used to be really bad at like catastrophizing, to finding all the bad things that were happening. And I think, so I was talking to one of my coworkers a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, well, why can't we just live in this moment, right? And instead of constantly looking for the negative, recognize the small things and just say to yourself throughout the day, like not toxic positivity, but throughout the day, just say, recognize when things are going well and say to yourself, this is nice. Right?
I like that.
Like,
I
love
it.
This is nice. And it's such a small thing, but it's so powerful to just be able to recognize, like, this is nice. Like right now, this is nice.
This is so
nice.
This is nice. That's right.
Right.
It's like a receiving energy, right? And not a lot of us, especially when time is on our backs, right? Or we have to get to this, to that. Not many of us are within that perspective, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get to that perspective, you think?
So, and I sound like a broken record a lot. Well, maybe you haven't heard me say it before, but this is something that I have on repeat. I feel like, and maybe it's kind of cliche, but gratitude. It really is about gratitude and seeking gratitude in your life. And it didn't come easy to me. I have a pretty traumatic history. I've overcome a lot in my life. And so seeking gratitude was not easy for me for a very long time. But somebody in the beginning of my recovery told me, even if it's the same 5 things every day, I want you, before your feet even hit the floor in the morning, write down 5 things that you're grateful for, right? And some days it was just as simple as, I have clean underwear to put on today, right? But it really is about seeking gratitude, and it took me a while to get into the habit, and it didn't happen right away. You know, when we go to the gym, we don't expect results after one workout, right?
So true.
It's progress, right? And consistency with it. And that's really what shaped my recovery and now my outlook on life.
Nice.
I tend to be a very positive person, solution seeking because of gratitude. And now, you know, this is something I will preach it every day, gratitude, and finding the positive things in life.
And so, oh yeah, go ahead.
I think you touched on something super important, like wanting these like instant results, because we do it with mental, emotional things, but we don't do it all as much with physical things.
Right.
And I find it super interesting because, like, a lot of times we don't do it with physical things because we've had this fluctuation. And like it's very like high on radar, like it takes consistency and you have to work at it and all of this type of stuff. And what we don't think about is for 30 years we had a shitty mindset.
Yep.
For 30 years we didn't take care of ourselves emotionally or mentally. For 30 years we were in toxic relationships or around people that were toxic or whatever the case may be. And then we're like, okay, when am I done figuring out how to make it better? I've been doing this for like 3 weeks. Are we done now? And I'm like,
no. And I think that brings up, I don't think we're ever done.
No, we're not.
Right? I don't think we're ever done healing and growing and learning. I think that we can get to different like points where maybe we're more healed than we were 10 years ago. But I honestly believe that to stay open-minded and all of that, you have to be willing to grow and learn forever.
100%.
There's not like, I'm never gonna reach my apex of healing because I'm forever gonna be learning.
You understand.
Yeah.
You understand.
Yeah.
You know, the radical acceptance of that is hard at first, guys.
Yeah.
Because of the time thing, or the I'm gonna be happy when I'm healed. No, let's be happy while we're healing. Even though it's messy, it's actually really, really hope. It brings me so much hope. It brings me so much excitement and wonder.
Yes.
Even though it's messy.
Like if you didn't have ick and then like nice things that you can be grateful for, then what's the point? Then it like the nice stuff loses its shine if we don't have contrast.
Yeah.
You don't like take a picture of like just a blue sky with nothing in front of it and then like you're just like, oh yes, that was a nice day. Well, compared to what?
Right. No mud, no lotus.
Exactly. And I think you bring up a really good point in the openness. It's the openness. I think if we're open and we're curious, you know, those are always the best qualities for moving through healing. And honestly too, like when you brought up gratefulness, I think of mindfulness. Because without mindfulness, it's hard to get to gratitude.
Yes.
You know, so we need these simple things.
Yeah.
But again, like last podcast, distractions.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Jessica.
Yeah.
So because like you're a recovery coach and you're a badass, you know, I think, you know, maybe there are people listening right now that are thinking about recovery or recovery curious or in recovery. And I'm just I'm also in recovery. So I'm 17 years in recovery. And so like, I love talking to people in recovery, and with you being a recovery coach, I would love for you to talk about, if you're willing, maybe your personal journey or whatever comes up for you. Like, what do you think about, what's your hot take?
Well, I decided to become a recovery coach because I'm really passionate about the supports, right? Because I think where we're lacking so much, the reason people relapse, the reason people struggle even in recovery is lack of connection, lack of supports, lack of resources, right? And this was something I personally experienced. I was in and out of addiction for almost 15 years. I tried to quit many, many times on my own. It never really worked out for long. And there were extenuating circumstances, but you know, over the years, it just got more and more desperate, more and more intense, to the point where, my primary drug of choice was stimulants, but I did dabble with everything. And I dealt with the child protective system. I was in and out of jail. I was also in a very abusive relationship for 13 years. And so in 2018, at the end of 2018, my husband actually completed suicide with an overdose and passed away. And that was it was a really intense point in my life. I was very much in the crisis of my active addiction, and that didn't help. My son was removed from my care the same day that my husband died. And I wasn't allowed to see him for 30 days. So there was a lot of trauma surrounding that. I'm the one who found my husband. I woke up next to him. So that was super traumatic. And I kind of spiraled after that. And it took me about 7 months and my CPS caseworker telling me, I don't think your son's going to survive this world if he loses you. And
wow.
It was very powerful, and it opened my eyes, and it made me realize that at that point, I didn't really care what happened to me, but I couldn't imagine this world without the bright light of my son in it. So I made the decision that day to call every rehab within 500 miles of where I lived. And actually, only one called me back.
Oh,
wow.
And it was actually called Serenity House. And I went to rehab in Texas, but I had to wait for 6 weeks for that bed. I had to call every week so they could make sure I still wanted the bed. And finally, it opened up, and I did go ahead and participate in that. I did 30 days of inpatient, and then I opted in for 90 days of outpatient, even though I knew it was going to keep me away from my son for 3 more months. I decided I was going to give myself the best chance I possibly could to stay clean. And it was during that outpatient stay that I actually was connected with my own recovery coach. And I still stay connected with her. She actually is retiring on Friday.
Wow.
So, but she was amazing, and she kind of opened my eyes to what support really looks like, what unconditional caring looks like.
I love that.
Yeah,
beautiful.
She was, and that whole program really, it was the outpatient program, the people, the recovery coaches, the supports coordinators, the outpatient trainers, like it was a whole community of recovery, and it was the first time that I had been exposed to a recovery community. And it really shaped how I moved forward in my recovery. And I think that's when I decided that I wanted to do that. I wanted to be that, right? I wanted to become the person that I wish I had.
Right.
Beautiful.
And so that's kind of really guided me. And for the first couple of years, I really focused on my own recovery. I did a job, like I worked, and I just focused on getting through, because that first year was really challenging for me, especially because I moved across the country in an effort to make sure I stayed clean. So my first year, and it was right after COVID, or right before COVID, when I moved to Michigan. So not only was I very early in recovery, I was cut off from everybody.
Yeah.
And so that first year was hard, and I really had to put in a lot of effort to seek connection in that first year. But then I was told about a position opening up as a recovery coach. I went for it and got it. And that's my entire world changed in that moment. And I got to become a part of this community here and really build those connections, network in the community. And I love it. I love this community, and I love helping people. when the light comes on in people's eyes,
Uh-huh.
that's like the best feeling in the world for me. And I love being a cheerleader. I love helping people find their potential. Because, and I really do think it's all about connection. There's a really famous TED Talk by Johan Hari. It's called "Everything You Think You Know About Addiction Is Wrong." And it's one of my favorites.
I've
and
never
I love
seen
this
it.
one.
Oh my gosh.
It's the best thing ever.
It's the best thing ever.
I
And
watched this.
it is, it's amazing. It's amazing. But the main takeaway, right, is that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
Oh,
And
honey.
it really is.
Yeah, I just got goosebumps all over my
Yeah,
body.
And it
That
comes
is
from
huge.
like all these lab tests.
Yes, Rat Park.
Rat Park, where if the rats only had drugs and were isolated,
Yeah.
they OD'd. They
Yeah.
took all the drugs.
They used it until they died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they had things to play with and other rats and drugs, guess what? They didn't use the drugs.
Yep.
They played with stuff and hung out with other rats.
Yep. So
So when we're
my
isolated,
goodness.
there's nothing for us to do. We seek connection through the drug.
Yep.
Because it gives us the feeling that we're supposed to have organically.
Exactly.
Yep.
So if
Oh, that's
we have
fabulous. That's fabulous.
I love it. It's one of my favorites.
What
I
was
quote it
the
all the
name?
time.
Can you
It's
say his name again?
Johan Hari, Hari. And the name of the TED Talk is "Everything You Think You Know About Addiction Is Wrong."
Totally watching that this
Oh, you
week.
have
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
It's
sounds
fabulous.
Excellent.
It's
Thank you.
phenomenal.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and it is just, this is just something I'm super passionate about because I think everybody deserves to live a happy life, right? To live a contented life, to feel empowered, to feel powerful,
Yeah.
right? And that was one of the things for me is I felt powerless.
Oh, absolutely.
For so long, going through addiction, going through a traumatic relationship. I felt like a death magnet for a while. Everybody around me was dying, right?
Yeah.
And so now in doing what I'm doing, not only am I learning from the people that I'm working with, but I'm snatching my power back.
Yeah,
right?
baby.
And I get to move through my life understanding the power of my energy now.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and
And the power of your heart.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm picking up a lot from you, Jessica, is you're a lot like Becca and I, where we really just want to uplift other people.
Yes.
We want to put the mirror in front of their face so they can see what we see.
Yes.
And that kind of energy, like I really love those two words. You said unconditional caring.
Yeah.
I've never heard those two words together. It's usually unconditional love.
Right.
But love is an action, love is caring. So I really like the unconditional caring.
Yeah.
I'm going to use those words with myself and with others.
I think that's
it's really
really
beautiful.
powerful to say it that way because when people hear the word love, they think romantic, and like automatically it's like a programming thing.
Yeah.
And so if we say unconditional caring,
Yeah.
it's more in alignment with what unconditional love actually means.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like it.
I'm gonna start using that too. I'm like, oh god, yes.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Like, you really did go through a lot of layers of trauma.
Yeah.
And you had to pick yourself up so many times.
Right. Well, and I'm still unpacking.
Yes!
Yeah.
Like you're still unpacking.
Yeah, I'm still unpacking. Like
You need
this
time.
I'm not done healing, right? I still, there's still a lot that I have work to do on. I'm still learning. And that's okay.
It is.
It is. So
We all will be. And I think that's a beautiful character strength too, just to be eager to learn.
Yeah.
You know, I often, and this is going to be a little spicy, a little racy for some folks, but the thought of heaven sometimes, you know, in Christian concepts kind of scares me because it feels stagnant.
Yeah.
And I've always been like this eager to learn, want to evolve and transmute, and the thought of ending that evolution seems a little trippy to me. So like I definitely think we're continually throughout our lives, no matter who we are, going to be unraveling, unpacking, unfolding.
yeah.
Well,
that
and
makes
it's
sense.
interesting because if you look at Hinduism and the concept and Buddhism and the concept of reincarnation, right? All the lessons it isn't static. We take all of this and then we go into another cycle where we have the opportunity to learn more. We don't leave it behind.
Right.
Right? Like we're spiraling up. We just keep
Right.
taking and learning and growing and
I
learning
now
and
view
growing.
heaven as a resting place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. In my own little spirituality, you know.
Yeah, that totally
But
makes sense.
what you're saying does track. And I think, you know, if we can have that attitude about this life we're living now, regardless of what our spirituality or religion is, have the open mindset and the open heart and the curiosity to see what else is there, see what else we can unfold or unravel.
Right,
Like we're just layered onions, babes.
Yeah, because then life is an adventure
Yeah.
full of gratitude because
Yeah.
then we're open and curious, right?
Yep.
It's like the number one requirement for me is like open and curious.
Mhm.
It
Yep.
is.
And if we're open and curious, then there's room for so much range of experience.
I feel like that had to have helped you too, Jessica, like on your journey in finding sobriety, like having a sudden perspective shift, right? That opens you up so that you can see that there's these other opportunities in play, these other ways, these other paths.
Yeah. Well, I think, and not just for my life, but for my recovery in general, I think my first introduction to recovery was 12 steps, right? And it was the first time I had ever been introduced to any formal type of recovery. And so at first I thought that was all there was. I thought that was it, right?
A
And
lot of
so
people think that.
I was like, okay, yeah, so this is what we're doing. And then I kind of started noticing some things that my energy wasn't in line with. And I'm not saying that AA or 12 steps is bad. I
Right.
think that it's a wonderful program that works for some people. All pathways to recovery work for some people.
I love
Right.
that statement. Excellent.
Yeah, but as I was learning and growing and I was healing, I realized that learning about multiple pathways to recovery was really helpful for me because my recovery doesn't look like one thing or the other thing or one pathway or the other pathway. I take what makes sense to me
Yep.
That's right.
and I apply it to my recovery. And because of that open-mindedness, now I can do that with my whole life. I take what makes sense to me and I apply it. And if it doesn't make sense, I leave it where it is.
Beautiful.
Yes.
But I think it's so important in the recovery community to support multiple pathways to recovery.
Absolutely.
Because there are so many pathways and each person's pathway is just as unique as they are.
Yes.
And I don't think that we should put ourselves into boxes.
I agree.
So.
Can you name some of the other
Yeah.
avenues?
Yeah.
Please.
So obviously we all know about 12 steps. That's one of the more well-known ones, but there is MAT, medication assisted treatment, as a pathway to recovery. Recovery coaching is a pathway to recovery. Traditional like a combination of therapy and MAT and recovery coaching, combining those is a pathway, right? We have recovery dharma.
Yep.
Which is recovery dharma is based on Buddhism, and so that one's really cool. And also another refuge recovery and recovery dharma are very similar, but refuge recovery is more based on the original, like we're talking about Siddhartha before he became the Buddha, right? So that's refuge recovery. Jail, legal involvement as a pathway to recovery. Smart recovery. There's so many different, and then also natural or spontaneous recovery, right? Because some people never have to do a formal quote unquote pathway. It's just a decision that they make in their head one day. I'm not going to do this anymore, and then they live that lifestyle.
And it's
right?
really hard when it's interesting you say that because I've noticed that if you are somebody who participate or has experienced spontaneous or natural recovery, like even if you tried other things and like you couldn't get the support you wanted and then you were like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do it myself. Yeah. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of support for that.
Right. Well, because
it's very lonely.
Because I think that I think we have have this mindset that in order to be successful in recovery, it has to look like one thing or another,
Yeah.
right? But who am I to judge your recovery, right? Who am I to judge how you got there? All I want to do is make sure that you know you're not alone.
Well, and it's super interesting because just from my personal experience was spontaneous natural recovery after seeking help and being turned down. And so when I started doing the spontaneous natural process myself, which I did 3 different times, and the 3rd time it stuck, right? Because relapse is part of recovery.
Yeah.
All those times people would be like, you're gonna fail. Everybody was like, you're not doing MAT, you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail, you're gonna die. And I'm like, gee, thanks for the support.
Right.
Like,
right.
you have to go to NA. And I'm like, when I go to NA, everybody talks about how they're gonna go score dope afterward, and then I will relapse. So I'm not doing that.
Right.
Like, it just wasn't a
were-
good fit.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I have a theory, or I have a hypothesis.
Okay.
Is the spontaneous natural recovery spiritual awakening?
It is. I believe it is.
I think that definitely it is. It's an opening of the eyes,
It
right?
is.
Coming to terms with something inside of yourself.
So that, and I was literally told, so I'm a very spiritual person. I've been communicating with the Holy Spirit since I was very, very young. I've seen angels, and anybody can take that however they like, okay? And when I was, right before I started the spontaneous recovery, I was told that if I continued to do this, I would die, and I just had to do it myself because nobody was going to help me, but I was supported, and it would be okay. But you're going to die, so it's your decision.
Right.
And I was told that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you get to make a decision.
And then I got to make a decision.
It feels like a soul awakening to me.
And I started to recall, because I'm a really big nerd, really big bookworm. I started to recall all these quotes from Nietzsche, different philosophers, different Bible verses, different things from the Upanishads that I had read when I was a teenager. I started hearing them. And it was okay. All right, okay. So it was there's food here for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, we're gonna get to reading, and and it was maybe you should look into you've had bad luck with therapists. Why don't you go see what it's like do your own research. You like to research stuff. You're a nerd. And I'm like, okay. I just did it myself.
Yeah. And I think that there's not. So the thing is that there's not a lot of research about natural or spontaneous
There's
recovery,
not.
right? So we don't hear about it as often because there's just not a lot of because people who naturally or spontaneously recover aren't going necessarily to meetings. They aren't participating in MAT all the time, right? Now some people choose to do that as a support.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lack of research simply because it's under-reported.
And I think that people that do spontaneous or natural recovery and are using MAT or are very discouraged from terminating it and told that they'll fail. That's what happened to me.
Right.
I was like, this isn't good for me. I can tell that it's harming my body. I'm very lethargic. This isn't for me. I'm not doing it anymore.
Right.
And they're like, you have to. And I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah, so and that's a clarifying point. If you're using MAT, I'm proud of you. If you're not, I'm proud of you, right?
Yeah.
If you used MAT and now you're ready to get off of it, I'm proud of you, right? Regardless of what your pathway to recovery was, you deserve to have that support and that
100%.
unconditional caring,
Yes.
right? It doesn't matter how you got to recovery.
It doesn't.
You're here.
Yeah.
And that should be supported.
It should definitely be supported. And I think that there has been a severe lack of that. And that's what made me so passionate about the previous work that I've done, as you know, in systems. All of the work that I did in systems was reentry, substance use, building out systems, and resource provision for people, because I didn't have any of that.
Right.
And so I'm super passionate about it.
Yeah, you know my heart, Becca. I'm also really passionate about finding the gaps,
Yes.
right? Because that I think that's where it is. The reason we're seeing recidivism, the reason we're seeing relapse and returns to uses is because of the gaps.
It is because of the gaps.
Yeah.
And they're glaringly obvious. And then when you tell the systems that are in place currently, look, this is the gap, this is how you can fix it. I can see it really clearly. They're like, we just don't do that. And I'm like, this
is the way we've always done it.
Why do you? So you want it to work, but you don't want to listen to how to fix it. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
And then it just costs them more money.
Right.
But it would actually save them money.
That's what I'm saying. It costs them more money to do what they're doing.
Oh, it's just ridiculous.
It would actually save them money, so make it make sense.
I don't get it.
Listen, but as we know, change is hard.
Change is super hard. And I think it's bigger than change being hard. What I've noticed is, as humans, we really don't like to admit we might have been wrong.
Yes.
And so a whole system saying, guess what? We made a mistake, but we have new information and now we want to fix it, I think is very difficult.
Right.
Because they're an overarching, they're supposed to know what they're doing.
Right.
But let's be real, none of us know what the fuck we're doing.
Right. All of us are
we're all
Just
learning
trying our
as
best.
we go. And we're just grateful for the experience and learning as we go and open and curious.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like, there's nothing wrong with saying, oh, well, that thing maybe isn't actually working. So yeah, thanks for the information. Let's change it.
And I think that ties right back into the conversation we've been having this whole time, being open-minded, being willing to learn and grow and change. And that's why I love what I'm doing with you guys, right? Because I feel like this natural curiosity, this want to support people no matter what that looks like, is so in line with where my heart and soul are telling me to go. This is, this is where I'm following, is to try to find those gaps, to try to support people, to keep showing up for people.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, I love
It
you
is
guys.
beautiful.
It was so great to talk to you, Jessica.
It was. I want to go through some of these comments.
Okay.
We got Cindy was commenting on our last discussion. I'm going to start with the beginning of what she said. She said lack of support and the people around you. Oops. It's making me go down. Vilify recovery.
It does vilify recovery.
Yeah, that's right. That's a
It's
beautiful point.
Seen as some kind of moral
Failing.
failure, and it's not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think, and I just want to say that the recovery community in general, right? And there's going to be bad apples everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But the recovery community in general is some of the most accepting, non-judgmental, supportive, open-minded people I've ever met.
Yeah.
Because we understand,
Right.
right? That life sucks sometimes, but you know what? We're still going to keep showing up.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
And then she says, I started using gratefulness years ago. I started because everything in my life was stagnant and I felt I had no future. I can't stand to have a predictable life.
Yeah.
Beautiful, Cindy. We don't want predictable either. We feel you there. Chaotic good and all,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Then she says, I did spontaneous recovery the best I could, but then got to a point where I couldn't figure out how to change my world and the people around, trying to be stronger than the stagnant energy around me.
Yeah.
Then I came to Chaotic Good, and the doors are opening all around me because of you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
You're so sweet,
Love
Cindy.
you.
You're a beautiful addition, love. And then we have Allie. Allie was talking about, we were talking about earlier when we were kind of thinking about, you were discussing gratefulness and mindfulness. She says, rewiring the brain to find the divinity all around us. It gets easier the more you do it. Observe the thinking mind.
yes. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Irene joined us and she said, morning, ladies.
Morning, Irene.
Morning.
We love you.
Thank you for all your comments and for joining us, you guys.
Yeah, you can stay over there so you can end our live video because you're right there.
We're right here.
We love you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Next week, we are going to have our clinician Jessica join us.
Yes, we are.
So we're super excited for that, and we hope to see you soon.
Yes. And if anybody needs any help with recovery, please reach out to Jessica here. She is obviously very enthusiastic about her job.
And I can help with people who are still struggling with active addiction, people who are recovery curious, people who are new in recovery, or people who have lots of time in recovery.
Yeah.
Wherever you're at, I want to meet you there.
Beautiful.
Yay! We love you.
We do. Be well, you guys. Bye.
Bye.